If our solar system is not unusual, then there are so many planets in the universe that, for example, they outnumber the sum of all sounds and words ever uttered by every human who has ever lived. To declare that Earth must be the only planet with life in the universe would be inexcusably big-headed of us. Neil deGrasse Tyson. Welcome back to this week's episode of the Well House Exorcism. This is your ghost of a host of the most, Shanna.
It's PukwuPJ.
And for this week, episode 93, we have a special guest, Steve Smith. He's one of our listeners who's messaged me on Instagram a whole bunch of times. So, Steve, tell us all about yourself.
I am a 38, knocking on 39-year-old guy who joined the Navy when I was 18 out of high school.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you very much. I served 7 years on USS Nimitz. Did 4 deployments, 05, 07, 08, and 9 and 10, which was the longest.
Now, where were you deployed to?
The Middle East, Persian Gulf, Arabian Sea area.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. Okay.
In support of OEF and OIF. Yeah, we did a lot of time over there, but yeah, it was just basically doing what the country asked us to do at that time.
I remember being in college and just like being afraid, you know, because 2005 is when we started college.
Yeah.
So we had just graduated. Yeah. And
well, I remember thinking I missed out on something because I didn't go to college, but the Navy was kind of my college.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, my graduation, you know, just to put in context, 2009, our spokesperson there was actually a general in the armed forces, and his speech is like, you're graduating during the worst recession ever, and we have all these wars happening in the Middle East. Good luck. Like that was the speech.
It was the most depressing graduation speech.
Yeah. I'm kind of like, wait, I wanted like a second. Well, okay, never mind.
Yeah. Right?
So, but I mean, that was a really scary time. So, because that was not long after 9/11. So,
yeah.
So really, thank you. Like, that was a scary time for all of us here in America. Because that means that you understand, like, us, too, you felt the world change. Like, the moment that those planes at the tower, like, the America that we knew, it was gone.
It was a different world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's, so my dad, and, you know, he's no longer with us, but he was a Vietnam vet.
Mm-hmm.
He knew that the world changed then. Kind of like I knew the world changed
mm-hmm.
in the early 2000s. Totally different situation in a sense,
mm-hmm.
but it just happened. And
well, I remember I was in history class, and my history teacher, our history teacher, was a former Marine. And the moment that it happened, and the second plane hit then too, he turned to us and he said, "I'm really sorry, guys, but the America that you knew is gone." And I remember that moment. I'm getting chills thinking about it again, but like, I remember that moment because it's a core memory, and gosh, was he right? Like, it's amazing how he called it.
Yeah.
Now, PJ did not have that experience. No, on my end, we turned on just in time to see the first plane, actually, because of the way it got turned on. And then when we started seeing, because a lot of people don't see this nowadays, but, you're watching it live on TV. You're watching what looks like ants jump, like kind of falling out of the towers, and you realize, oh, no, those are people. When that started coming across the news, they turned the TVs off through the office, and our teacher goes, nope, click, and he turns it back on. He's like, this is history, and we're watching it. So I was able to watch all of it because I had a great teacher.
Yeah.
PJ can't say that.
That's funny. Yeah. What's funny, I mean, it's not funny, but so I had gotten a shoulder strain injury because I played football.
Mm-hmm.
And I was set to go to physical therapy that day. I think I was a freshman or sophomore or something like that. And I remember I told my mom, I said, a second plane hit the building. And she said, no, you're just seeing a replay. And I said, no, there was already a tower that was burning, and a second plane hit the second tower.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, she came out, she said, oh my God, you're right. But that's the America we grew up in.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, we live in Pennsylvania, as you know, and so for us, that's just a hop and a skip and a jump for us to go over to New York City. So that was scary because we live in northeastern Pennsylvania.
Class dismissed around like 11 in the morning or 10.
And then the whole next 2 weeks, there were Black Hawk helicopters and stuff flying over the school because there's a really major pipeline and there's a hidden location.
Yeah, there's an airbase near the Pocono region, like, Scranton, Wilkes-Barre area.
But yeah, there's something like hidden for the government that no one knows about. But it's out there too.
Right.
But they were trying to. They got intel that they might be bombing pipelines next. So we're just there in class, and there goes Black Hawk color. Oh my gosh!
Yeah, windows are rattling because they're flying so low.
It was scary. Different time for us. But anyway, I apologize. So you're a veteran, so thank you. And you were busy for 7 years. Now, did you re-enlist a couple times, or did you choose to be in for 7 years? Or
so I re-enlisted once. So I enlisted for 4 years, made E5, which most people don't understand, but that's like upper, we call it the backbone of the fleet in the Navy. It's like you've made it, you're kind of,
oh wow,
you're leadership, but you're not the guy, know.
That's where I like to be.
Yeah.
It's not my fault, it's their fault.
Yeah, you're in the middle. You can point up and say it's their fault, or you can point down and say it's their fault. And then I decided to re-enlist. I did 3 more years. Ended up getting out in 2011. What they were doing, because we were winding down coming out of Iraq and Afghanistan, they said, hey, look, we want people to get out. So they gave me a severance package to get out, which I took the money.
Darn right you did. When does the government give money?
Yeah, unfortunately, half of it went to taxes. But, it is what it is. That's a society. And
we thank you for your service again.
Right. but no, it was good though. I mean, it was so ironically, I re-enlisted in 2008 on my mom's birthday, and then I deployed in 2009 on my mom's birthday.
Oh wow.
Yeah. It's weird. Like, how does that happen? But
and his family, everyone's born on February 5th. I don't want to hear it.
Yeah.
Like,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, my mom, a year later, her sister, and then 38 or 37 years after that, me. All on the same day.
Our son Alex is born on February 6th.
Wow.
I want him to have his own birthday. So it's like, no, he's not going to be born on the 5th. It'll be the 6th.
I feel like y'all need a plaque on the ground.
So what do you do now?
So I work for a pipeline company.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah. Speaking of pipelines.
Yeah, right.
So,
they're necessary.
Yeah. Basically now I move refined products from state to state and offload barges. And yeah, so Nashville is one of the pipeline crossroads, with all the infrastructure. We have pipelines that come in here. We're doing everything we can to do the right thing, And we have a saying, we say, make it easy to do the right thing and not the wrong thing. And that's the people we hire. But anyhow.
Well, you're preaching to the choir. We're Catholic.
I actually found you guys' podcast because I was listening to a Catholic podcast. It was the Exorcism Files.
Is that the priest who tells the stories and stuff like that? Because that's how a lot of people have found our podcast, is through
that's how I found
that
one.
How did that happen?
Yep.
Yeah, so how'd that work? Were we just like next on the list?
So I was talking to this guy I work with quite frequently, and he said, man, do you listen to podcasts? I said, not really. He goes, man, you need to check this podcast out. When I listened to it, it popped up your guys' Gettysburg podcast.
Oh, okay.
That's how I found y'all.
Okay.
And then I was like, and then I got hooked when I listened to the Gettysburg podcast. I was like, wow.
That's before we were professional.
Yeah.
You've been with us for a while.
Yeah, you did research, and you I could tell that you weren't biased about things. Like, you just, hey, you did research, and this is what it is.
Yeah.
And this is awesome. And then I started hearing about like some of the alien stuff, and I was like, well, that's where PJ comes in, And I was like, but
one of us researches.
Well, I'll give you both credit, but
I do for my episodes.
True.
Yeah, but it just made my day. I was like, y'all just really are real people, You know,
we try to show that like we're not liars. Like we're just this is us.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. And that's how. But it made my day, and I've been hooked ever since.
Cool.
So. We appreciate that. We love having listeners, and that's the common thing we get is it's that it's researched. And someone recently just said that we have good chemistry together on the podcast. I'm like, what? Can you hear me like reaching through the camera to like punch him? Like, what are you hearing on your end? Because I'll tell
in the face or what?
He's across the table half the time, and I'm like, stop talking.
Yeah, some of my coworkers who listen to it, they're like, I could hear her eyes rolling.
It's funny.
But it's been a wild ride for the past 2 years. Like, we're really enjoying it. I can't believe we're going to be keynote speakers in 2 months. It's
we're
crazy.
celebrating our 2-year anniversary of the podcast,
awesome.
Being speakers at a convention in Waynesburg, PA, right above the West Virginia border. So
yeah,
it's just kind of cool. I don't know.
I have an interesting story.
Yes.
So,
okay.
So I went to a conference in Wisconsin, I believe it was, and the keynote speaker was the captain of the submarine that killed the folks on the Japanese students' fishing boat. And this was back in 2004, I think.
I don't know if I heard about this.
Been a junior in high school. I don't.
Okay, so I was in high school, but he did a breach, which is not something that's normal to do. But he had people that were on board and was told to do a breach to show them what a submarine was capable of off the coast of Hawaii.
Oh, no.
And it was
I see where this is going.
Yes, it was Japanese students and fishermen on a research vessel. And you can do the research and you'll find it.
Mm-hmm.
But he breached and basically broke the boat in half. And unfortunately killed everybody on board.
Everybody, yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, and he got basically a dishonorable discharge because he was breaking protocol.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Long story short, he's now a motivational speaker, but he says, I did what I was told to do, but I did what I knew was not right. And it was kind of one of them things.
Wow.
And he's doing fine now, but I actually ate lunch with the guy. He sat at my table. But it made me think back to the USS Indianapolis incident.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure you know about that based off your...
Well, I don't think PJ does.
So. Yeah, I don't.
Okay. So the USS Indianapolis delivered the nuclear or atom bomb components that were dropped in Japan.
Oh.
And it was a destroyer. And it was a top secret mission. And they took them there. They dropped them off. And then when they left, they were headed, I think, to or from Lady Gulf. I don't remember. They got torpedoed by a Japanese submarine. And they got sunk. And out of 1,200 and something people on board, I think 900 and something made it in the water alive.
Mm-hmm.
And less than 300 were rescued.
Yeah.
Most of them died to shark attacks. But it was so top secret, nobody wanted to hear it. Even the U.S. didn't claim it because of what it was. After they got rescued, they actually court-martialed the captain of the Indianapolis because he should have went down with the ship. And they didn't want him to tell anybody about what happened. They actually brought a Japanese captain of the submarine over to basically go against him in court, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was weird. It was a whole weird thing. And then years later, it was actually some college kids that were like, this ain't right. And they figured it out. And they filed a thing and got Congress to overturn his sentence.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because to claim that it was theirs would have been to claim that they had nuclear weapons and all that kind of stuff, so they couldn't.
Correct.
It's that gray area.
Yeah.
Yep. And they couldn't do it because all the top secret stuff. So
my dad liked talking about that one a lot.
My dad. Oh, okay.
Yeah, my dad was the curator of the Holocaust Museum.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he was in the Air Force for 20 years, and he was a master sergeant. But he was also special reconnaissance, so he saw
a lot of things.
He saw things.
Yeah.
Like to
That's
this,
fair.
he devoutly believed in aliens. So that's why I agree with Neil deGrasse Tyson. Like, we can't pretend that like we're the only species that exist in the universe.
Yeah,
That's
right.
just silly,
Right.
so. But anyway, we are here tonight to actually talk about aliens and the Navy, which is kind of fun. So that's a really good segue. So you came to me on Instagram and said, I have a really cool idea, which is the USS Nimitz, because you were on it. And I said, hot diggity dog, I'm in. So I have done a whole bunch of research on the ship itself, and you have your own personal stories because it is reportedly haunted. So my references for this evening are going to be from airpac.navy.military. Of course, you got to go right to the source. History.com, LinkedIn, of all places. Fun fact, LinkedIn.
Wow.
And for us up here, the Mercury Pottsville newspaper.
Huh.
Oh, yeah, we're going local.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't want to brag, but I got this researching thing down. All right.
That's pretty legit.
A little dance here. So, as you said, you served on it, really during our college years and beyond a little bit. But this thing has been working for a long old time. So I want to go over the history of the ship first, and then I'll have you take it away, too. So first off, the ship was named after World War II Pacific Fleet Commander Chester W. Nimitz, who was the Navy's 3rd Fleet Admiral. I don't know what that means because I'm not a Navy person. Jen, my step monster, would yell at me. What is a 3rd Fleet Admiral in the Navy?
Okay, so he actually was the first 5-star admiral.
Okay.
During World War II. So he was a fleet admiral, which means he was in charge of an entire fleet, which was generally back then an aircraft carrier, a destroyer and carrier cruiser group, and submarine group.
Oh, wow.
And
okay.
that was kind of the real deal back then and still today. But they were the ones who, like, hey, if you mess up, this is what's coming at you, kind of thing, as far as the Navy's concerned. Nimitz actually, and I don't want to steal the story here, but he actually accepted the defeat of Japan when they surrendered. Yeah. On board USS Missouri, go figure, where I'm from. But
is it Missouri or?
It's Missouri, if you're from there. But now if you're from St. Louis, it's Missouri. If you're from Southwest Missouri, it's Missouri. But yeah, they actually, he actually gave the surrender on that boat. And if you ever go to Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, they have a spot and they say this is the exact spot where they surrendered. But
that's cool.
Huh.
Yeah. But back to the story is, Chester Nimitz was the first fleet admiral during World War II.
To get 5 stars.
Yes, he had 5 stars.
That's awesome.
And that was unheard of.
Mm-hmm. So he rocked it. So he deserves to have he deserves to have a boat named after him, is what we're saying.
He did something right, But go ahead and continue, sorry.
No, thank you. Because again, I'm sure Jen's getting mad in Texas.
And chime in whenever like that.
Please, don't be afraid to. The USS Nimitz is a supercarrier of the U.S. Navy and the lead ship of her class. One of the largest warships in the world, she was laid down, launched, and commissioned as a CVN 68, but was later redesignated as CVN 68. Now, my question about that is what those mean, but I know that at that point it meant nuclear-powered multi-mission aircraft carrier. You guys got some... I can see why you chopped it down to CVN, but...
Yeah, so carrier vessel nuclear.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. Gotcha, okay.
So carrier means it's aircraft. It's a vessel, and it's nuclear powered.
Okay, that makes more sense. Okay. And that happened on June 30th, 1975, as part of the fleet realignment. Nimitz was originally homeported at Naval Station Norfolk until 1987, when we were born.
Yep.
And then relocated to Naval Station Bremerton in Washington State, which is now part of Naval Base Kitsap.
Yep, Kitsap County.
Okay. Following her refueling and complex overhaul in 2001, so before you joined, her home port was changed to Naval Air Station North Island in San Diego. The home port of Nimitz, that's where you went? Okay. Because it changes. So the home port then moved to Naval Station Everett in Washington State in 2012. And then in January of 2015, she went back to Kitsap. So it's kind of been up and down that coast.
Yep.
Oh, all right.
So the Kitsap thing is because of... that's where a dry dock is.
Oh, okay.
So they actually pull in, they let the water out, the ship sits on wooden blocks, and they do all the maintenance that they can't do when it's in the water.
Mm-hmm. I actually made a joke in my script here. I said, honestly, she should have been home ported back to Norfolk because I watch NCIS. And I'd be like, I know where that is.
Right.
Alas. Alas.
Fair enough.
But I can say that Nimitz currently is the oldest American aircraft carrier in active service. In the past couple of years, the one that was ahead of her was decommissioned. So now she is the most active, the oldest. So you mentioned that you were, over in the Middle East, but she was first deployed to the Mediterranean in July of 1976.
Correct.
So, yeah, and it really, some of the things that she did were uneventful. And so I said here, she was there with Carrier Air Wing 8, and they embarked in company with the nuclear-powered cruisers, USS South Carolina and USS California. Then in November of 1976, she was awarded the Battle E from Commander Naval Air Force U.S. Atlantic Fleet for being the most efficient and foremost aircraft carrier in the Atlantic Fleet. So what does Battle E mean?
It's excellent operations.
Okay.
Yeah. So Battle E is something that each ship strives for every year. And if the admiral thinks that they have done above and beyond what they're supposed to do, then they get awarded a Battle E. And
nice.
So, like on our uniforms, would actually get a Battle E ribbon for that.
Oh, that's cool.
So we call it. It's funny because we call it fruit salad, but the fruit salad is what you wear on your chest to show everybody, like, hey, this is where I come from.
Yeah.
This is where, this is what my command has done, and that's everything. So, funny story, but McDonald's ribbon, you'd hear that a lot from people. If you join after 9/11 and you go serve, you get the Mickey D's ribbon. And the Mickey D's ribbon it's red and yellow. Looks
it's like ketchup and mustard.
Yeah, exactly. And people don't get it, but it's a joke between active service members because they're like, you know what? I got the Mickey D's. What do you got?
Joke's on you.
And, yeah, but then you get your Battle E's, you get your good conducts, you get your Navy Marine Corps accommodation medals, you get, and I got quite a few of those while I was in, but it was just.
But did you get a Mickey D?
I did.
Woo! All right.
I graduated basic training with a Mickey D.
I'm so proud of you.
Right?
McDonald's is too.
Hey, Ronald McDonald was proud of me.
Overall, her first cruise, though, was uneventful, and the carrier returned to Norfolk in February of 1977. But then in May of 1981, a Marine Corps EA-6B Prowler assigned to Carrier Air Wing 8, which is a CVW-8. I'm just going to go with that because I don't know what any of that means. But this is the story you're talking about before we started recording. It crashed on the flight deck. And
Correct.
So, 1981, before any of us were born, this happened. And it killed 14 crewmen and it injured 45 others. So it was a pretty major impact.
Yeah.
Now, the Prowler was fuel critical after a bolter, which means a missed approach, and its crash and the subsequent fire and explosions destroyed or damaged 19 other aircraft. So as it came in, it destroyed other stuff.
Go big or go home, right?
But wait, there's more. Its autopsy showed later that the pilot had 6 times the normal level of the stimulant brompheniramine in his blood. Despite having no connection to the accident, the media focused instead on the autopsy results of several members of the Nimitz enlisted flight deck crew who were killed and tested positive for marijuana. In an article by Robert Reinhold in the June 17, 1981 edition of the New York Times, it was reported that, quote, experts at the National Institute on Drug Abuse say it would probably be impossible to establish conclusively that any of the Nimitz crew had been smoking marijuana on the night of the crash because the test does not directly detect the component of marijuana smoke that acts on the brain. Because the metabolites may persist in the blood for many days, the test may detect marijuana that was used many days earlier, long after the effects have worn off. But as a result, President Ronald Reagan instituted the zero-tolerance drug policy across all of U.S. armed services, which started the mandatory drug testing of all military personnel. Again, it had no connection whatsoever to the crash itself and the death of those military men, but marijuana. And we're worried about the satanic panic is coming in. And it's like, can we talk about how the guy had way too much stimulant? But yeah, sure. And it wasn't just the planes that got destroyed. It was also setting off bombs. because fire.
Yeah.
It shot missiles. The fuel was burning. Yeah. It was all inclusive.
All right. So last thing about the Nimitz in terms of history before we go into the crash, because obviously that's where all the ghost stories are going to come from.
Yep.
So in November of 1995, Nimitz deployed to the Western Pacific, Indian Ocean, and Persian Gulf with carrier Air Wing 9, so CVW-9. In March of 96, the ship patrolled the waters off Taiwan amid missile tests conducted by the Chinese in the area, becoming the first American warship to pass through the Taiwan Strait since 1976, which is pretty cool. Nimitz also cruised the Persian Gulf in support of Southern Watch before returning from deployment on May 20th, 1996. And so that's where I paused my history so I can go into the first-hand account of the crash, because this is before any of us were born.
Mm-hmm.
And I found the first-hand account from a person who's from Pottsville, which is Pennsylvania, which is right down the road.
It's like 40 minutes from our house. Yeah.
So nice.
Home of Yingling.
Yep. Do you guys
do
you get that down there? It's good.
Oh, yeah, it's everywhere.
We do now. We do now. We didn't used to, but we do now.
Because they have a Florida one, right? Is that the one that has
There's a Yingling, Florida brewery, and we have to ship water down there because if they use Florida water, it tastes funny. So we have to ship Pennsylvania water down there.
It's true, though, because almost all the water in Florida tastes like sulfury.
Yeah, it was kind of weird. It's kind of gross when we were
it's
there.
very sulfury. So yeah, we ship water down to make good beer in Florida.
Nice.
So here's my story from the Pottsville newspaper. Machinist Mate 2 Timothy R. King was several decks down in the USS Nimitz when he felt a jolt around 11:15 p.m. on May 26, 1981. Jolts are not unusual when warplanes land on deck, but what made this one different was the thick black smoke that poured out of the air vents soon after the jolts. We knew something was wrong, recalls King, 61 of Reading, when, quote, a general quarters call was announced over the ship's intercom. This means the ship went into lockdown, with all the compartments sealed. The 21-year-old King and his shipmates didn't know that an EA-6B Prowler surveillance plane crashed on landing, ramming F-14 fighters on deck, and triggered an intense fire that set off Sidewinder and other missiles. The incidents cost the lives of 14 crewmen and injured about 45 others, according to news reports and unclassified Navy documents. King stated, I wanted to remember the crew members who died and were injured. It goes to show that servicemen die in peacetime too. King says he was on watch in the reactor area when the plane crashed on the flight deck on May 26, 1981. He did not see the resulting fire, fed by aviation fuel leaking from damaged planes, and only knew one of the victims. He and other sailors on duty couldn't leave their posts during the incident, but could hear some transmissions on the intercom, or the squawk box in Navy terms.
Mm-hmm.
That's a fun term, squawk box. Sorry. Throughout the tense night, sealed in a compartment well below the waterline, rumors began circulating among the crew. One involved feared that the fire could burn its way deck by deck until it went all the way out to the bottom of the ship. King stated, he didn't know for sure what was going on. He started to think that maybe this was it. All night, there were periodic announcements of the need for blood donors among the 5,000-member crew. In the morning, when the all-clear was given, the crew cheered. Then, with only water during the night, they were fed cheese sandwiches. King states, it's not something you can easily forget, but more than anything, I want to make sure the crew members who lost their lives and those who were injured in service to their country are not forgotten. So my question for you is, where you were down hearing the steps, is that near where he was? It said He
was on watch in the reactor area.
Yeah. Is it?
So he would have been in one of the main machinery rooms. So they have MMRs, they call them now, because it's main machinery room reactor.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And they're midship. Where I was at would have been just a forward pump room where JP5 was transferred.
Now, would that be above or below?
That would be down 7 decks.
Oh, wow.
Roughly. So on a carrier, the main deck is deck number 2. And they call it that because that's where all the mess deck is, where people eat. Mm-hmm. And they go and they get their food and stuff like that. And then you have your hangar bay level, which is where aircraft maintenance happens. Then you have your flight deck, which is where that would have happened with that EA-6B Prowler. Or EA-6, I don't know if it was a Bravo, but where it would have crashed. But main machinery rooms would have been more midship.
Okay.
That makes sense.
But, everyone was locked because, they got the, what's the
they shut it all
general
down.
Quarters call. Okay, general quarters.
Correct.
So I thought that just meant you're supposed to go to your bedroom, like at general quarters.
Yeah.
But all the doors lock wherever you are. You don't get to go somewhere else.
No, so when general quarters happens, there's actually people don't realize, but there's actually passwords that you get from the damage controlman. They'll send a password out. If you need to go through a watertight hatch, you have to know that password before you can open it, because they're scared that people are going to open hatches and it's going to let water through if something bad happens. So
gotcha. Oh, yeah.
You have to know what the password is, or the passcode, if you want to call it that.
That's kind of like a lockdown for a school. We have like certain passwords. That way, like do not open this door, because if the person doesn't know the password, that means it probably is the shooter. So
right, same thing. Yep.
Yeah. At least you get to have the cool like locking mechanisms on your doors. We just get
to. Yeah, we have some cool. They call them dogs.
We get to go click.
So it's dog tight.
No, not for.
I don't know where that term came from, but
and we'll take it.
Yep.
I just think about like how safe a ship is. I'd rather be on a ship teaching sometimes, because you worry about school shooters, and so my classroom door is wooden, and I lock the door. I'm like, this is fine.
They'll totally stop it.
Oh, but in any case, so I know you have your ghost stories, and I'd like you to share them. Mm-hmm. So, with the 14 servicemen who were killed on the USS Nimitz, it appears that the residual energy from this incident lives on. Various Navy personnel have seen moving shadow people, ghostly apparitions of their fallen comrades, and even a spectral plane in the sky. One Navy personnel who served on the USS Nimitz says that when the USS Nimitz is decommissioned, it will yield its paranormal secrets to many paranormal enthusiasts who will one day investigate this ship. Just like how the USS Hornet and Queen Mary are haunted, the USS Nimitz is also very haunted. There have been reports of ghostly apparitions of the servicemen, and of course their faces will appear on reflective surfaces throughout the ship. And that's all that I could really find online. So let's hear your stories, because yours is a first-hand account.
Pump Room 1 was very, I don't know how to, it's just like a heavy feeling. Mm-hmm. And when I would be down there as an airman, it's just like you would hear, there's a distinct sound of deck plates rattling from the ship moving through the water, and it's very different than people walking, like boots on a deck plate. And you would hear that, and you would sit there and you'd look around and you'd be like, but I'm down here by myself. But when you started looking around, it would stop.
Almost like it wanted to be known. That's interesting.
Right. Like, it's almost like they were stomping on the deck plates to get your attention, and then when you started, you'd get up and you'd look around, and they're like, nope, got their attention, you know?
I did it.
My job is done.
Yeah. And then down doing security rovers, you go down to Pump Room 2, Pump Room 3, 1 Bravo, Shaft Alley, things like that. And literally, it's like somebody was staring at you. But you'd look around and there's nobody there. And you're like, what's the deal? And I don't know, and forgive me for not doing enough research, but I know like Station 9 on the elbow is what we called it. Every time I went in there, it was weird.
It's just like felt that
was staring at you. It was a weird, and I don't know if that's where somebody died close to there, but you would come out of there and just be like, thank God I'm out of there, you know?
Yeah.
And you'd just move on to the next station because you had to sign logs in every station. But then I started doing research, and so, Pump Room 2, that guy, we won't say his name, who was a serial killer.
Oh, that's the next thing. So if you want to say his name now, go ahead, because
okay.
Before we started the podcast, listeners, we were talking about our combined research between the two of us, and Steve and I both are focusing on a serial killer that was actually on the board. But go ahead.
Yeah, and he admitted after he got caught. I want to say, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think in Michigan or somewhere, he had murdered a streetwalker. I don't know what
a whole bunch of them, actually.
Yeah, and he admitted of killing a bunch of them overseas.
Yep.
While he was riding on the Nimitz, that became kind of a thing, and yeah, I guess we can segue into that if you want.
Yeah. So, what room? So, what room was he in?
Well, he had been down in Pump Room number 2.
Pump Room number 2. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So, I wonder if he haunts there too. So all the research I have is the USS Nimitz has a dark past. Not too many people knew that at one time a serial killer was amongst its ranks. Serial killer John Eric Armstrong served on the USS Nimitz. He killed 5 prostitutes in Detroit, and he killed 2 women and 1 transsexual in Seattle. It is suspected that he may have killed other women around the world during his port stops because he said he did. But they can't know how many and for how long. But he was on the Nimitz for a while, so...
Yeah, he did 3 or 4 years, I think. So, but he had to have hit multiple ports overseas. So
yeah. So how often did you go to Pump Room 2? And what did it feel like to be there?
Oh, yeah, I worked down there multiple. I mean, I would say I probably spent combined. Well, I mean, over 4 deployments. I can't tell you how many hours. I don't want to make anything up, but
a lot.
But you would sit down there, and it was weird. Like you would just feel it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Something's not right. But
now, did you know that there was a serial killer that used to be there at the time, or no?
I did not at the time.
See, and that, like, to me, that's kind of validation too, because if you know, then you go in with that, like, oh my gosh, there was a killer here at one time.
That expectation, yeah.
You set yourself up for it. You prime yourself.
It's kind of like when y'all went to Penhurst. Like you knew the history.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and you're like, it's Penhurst, you know. But when you're sitting there and you're just like, but there were weird things that happened too. Like, you know, somebody left a pump on one time, and we were all sitting there. We were exhausted, and I was just like, I got a weird feeling. I went out there, and this pump was running. It shouldn't have been running. And now somebody admitted to it that they left it running, and I cut it off. That's like, what told me that this pump is running?
Yeah.
But, I mean, something told me something's not right. You know what I mean? Like,
like, hey, knock, knock. Hey, wake up. Hey, you. Go turn.
Maybe he was just really good at his job, too.
Hey, you know, maybe,
in between killing people.
See, Armstrong may have had a dirty, sordid secret, but he really cared about Pump Room, too, okay? So let's give Armstrong some love here.
Efficiency.
Yo, you need to look at that pump off.
This is embarrassing, guys. Come on.
Like, really? You're sleeping right now? Go cut that thing off.
I could do this while killing people. Come on, chop, chop.
Yeah, right? Why are you guys messing up?
All right, but the other reason we're here tonight is to talk about the aliens that go with the USS Nimitz, because you had said PJ would love this story, right? Because the tic-tac video.
I loved it when it first came out.
Yeah, and he had to, like, I bet he's seen the video. We have. But doing the research, I was like, PJ, there is so much more to the story. Like, Steve's right. Like, there's so much. And so we were telling, it's funny looking at you. You look so much like our brother-in-law Kyle, even the beard.
I actually have a picture of him pulled up.
Did
ready
you
to
ready
go.
for it? Yeah, it's funny.
Yeah, so this is our brother-in-law Kyle.
I got the beard and everything. Yeah.
So whenever you hear Kyle's creepy thoughts, just picture yourself saying that, and then.
But during the research, I learned so much more about like how for like a week prior they were seeing things, and so we were telling this to Kyle and to Jen, and they were like, because they are the ones who ran Liminal Unlimited, and they were just like, "All right, really cool, this is awesome." So, so how much do you know about that? Because this would have been after your time.
Yeah, well, this was before my time.
Oh, right, sorry, before your time. Yeah, because that happened in 2004, right?
Yeah, this happened in 2004, and I was in basic training at that time, and then went in 2005 was when I got to the Nimitz. But so I didn't know much about it, but it kind of rolled out years later that, well, they had a UFO experience, and I was like, nah. Well, of course, you got to imagine in 2005, I'm like, yeah, whatever.
Aliens, sure, it's 20 years ago. No one believes you.
Sure, Yeah, UFO. Like I'm thinking Will Smith and
Independence Day. Yeah, it's a good movie.
Welcome to Earth.
Like, whatever. Yeah, whatever. But no, the truth is it happened, and then it got later. It came out, and they were like, and then I watched a documentary about the I believe it was a lieutenant commander was one of the pilots, and it got declassified, but he was talking about it changing elevation, going crazy high, going crazy low down, like water level and this and that. And then I was talking to one of my buddies about it, and he goes, "Oh, it's just an experimental aircraft that we have."
That's what Kyle was asking. Could it just be experimental?
And I was like, maybe it is, but probably not.
Well, when Kyle said it to you, he said, do you think it's just some of our technology? Your response was, I felt like correct.
Oh yeah, like if it is,
but the elevation changes don't make sense.
Yeah, if it is human made, it has to be unmanned. It has to be an unmanned craft because like the rapid speed changes and acceleration would break you in half. And it would.
You wouldn't have a pilot in there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it has to be unmanned, or like. Like Kyle jokingly said, he's like, or it's filled with some kind of gelatin. And it's like, yeah, like it has to be filled. He said
jelly, to which I said, could it be strawberry so I can eat it? Thank you.
But, yeah, so if there's something in it, there needs to be some kind of super enhanced cushioning or something to, catch that force. But.
Yeah. Well, and we don't have the technology for the way it moves either. We're working on it, but in 2004, we didn't have that tech.
Because they talk about in the video, it's like zipping forward at these massive speeds, but also rotating at the same time, like a football.
It would go up and then down. And then,
And so I have a buddy, and I won't say his name, but he flies. So the EA-6B that caused the whole thing back in, what was that, 81?
The Prowler, yeah.
The Prowler. So those are decommissioned now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And now they have EA-8G Growlers, which are basically an F-18 platform, but they do the same thing, electronic attack warfare. And I have a buddy who flies those. And when he went to flight school, and this has been 10 years ago now, I remember seeing videos of him when he went through the tests before, like the simulators, before you even get to fly a plane like that. And it's like 3 Gs and you're fixing to pass out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So there's no way. And this was 10 years ago, not 20 years ago or 30 years ago. There's no way we had an aircraft that could do that.
Well, and that's
in my opinion.
Yeah, my dad always says too, like if you look at a lot of the pilots that you see who are going up to the higher Gs, they tend to be shorter in stature, like a little below 6 feet.
Right.
But they have very pale blue eyes. Like that's the very common feature because there's something about us blue-eyed people that we can like handle the force of G's. Some people who have different colored eyes can, but there's an unnatural number of blue-eyed people who are jet jockeys because they can handle the G's better.
Yep, I'm done. I couldn't do it.
He hates heights, so he couldn't do it.
Yeah, well, I don't know. If I'm in control of the craft, I think I'd be okay about it.
Oh, okay.
But like, I don't like roller coasters. Yeah.
Helicopters are scary compared to anything. Like, because they're more choppy.
They do crash more.
Yeah.
You can't eject out of a helicopter as easily.
You got to jump sideways.
Yeah.
Oh, so I feel bad because then people who are listening are kind of like, what alien thing were you talking about? So I feel like I should read part of my script now.
Well,
Does that make sense for them?
Yep.
But if you know about the tic-tac video, listeners, this makes sense because this is what we're talking about, is that famous tic-tac video.
And for those who don't know, the tic-tac video, it's the famous footage that was released when the United States government said that UFOs are real in 2018. Mm-hmm. So
this was released in 2017.
17.
Yeah, it's one of the very, very first
2017,
ones.
yeah.
Yeah. 13 years later. Anyway. All right. So the USS Nimitz was also involved in the famous sightings of the tic-tac UFO. A Navy fighter jet from the nuclear aircraft carrier USS Nimitz in 2004 tracked the incredible maneuvering tic-tac UFO, and it brought the realization that UFOs must be real. The government took notice. The tic-tac UFO was filmed by a reliable source, and they had been seen around the USS Nimitz in the past, probably attracted to the USS Nimitz because of its nuclear capability. One writer believes sightings of UFOs, or we call them UAPs now, right? UAPs.
No, we don't.
Well, they do on Skinwalker Ranch.
I know it's UAP now, but it's the same thing.
But you gotta say an Arkansas twang. What the crap is that? Do you watch Skinwalker Ranch? This show.
I don't.
Oh my gosh, you have to, because then all of my jokes about our modern day Einstein make sense. I love Travis. He is so intelligent. The backstory of him is amazing. His brother stopped he stopped school and started working to pay for his brother Travis to go to college because Travis showed such potential. He has 2 PhDs. Like, this guy is an absolute genius. He graduated early. Like, I'm a little bit of a fangirl for Travis because of his brain. Gifted teacher. So I just find it fascinating. But I always say it's not appropriate. There's no way that our generation's Einstein sounds like that because he has a very thick Arkansas accent. What the crap is that? And he was even saying "dadgummit" on the one episode. I was like, oh my gosh, you cannot be saying that right now. Anyway. But a lot of people say that these UFOs will continue to be around the USS Nimitz because of its nuclear connection. And I did notice too, like you had mentioned, we were talking about this with Kyle, that when Fukushima had its issue, there were lights in the sky, right?
Yeah, there were UFOs all over Fukushima during the flood. That was 2011, I think it was. Yeah, in Japan. And same with Chernobyl. There were UFOs over Chernobyl. Yeah. Whenever there's a nuclear disaster.
Yeah, when the Fukushima thing happened, we were on the way back to the United States on the Nimitz.
Oh, geez.
And they sent the Ronald Reagan strike group over there. And there's a bunch of those folks who actually have gotten cancer and stuff.
Because the radiation.
There's been a major lawsuit because they pulled the water up.
Oh my gosh.
And they were drinking that water.
Wow. Yeah.
But that's.
And that could have been you, you know?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, anyway. So here's the story about the tic-tac video. The day began as a routine naval training exercise, but it would soon become one of the best documented and most baffling UFO sightings of the 21st century. Witnesses included highly trained military personnel, among them several deeply experienced radar operators and fighter pilots, who at the time of the sightings were at the controls of arguably the most advanced flight technology ever created. And yet, none can explain what they saw. It was November 14, 2004, and the location was the Pacific Ocean, about 100 miles southwest of San Diego, California. So I put in here, hi, Nurse Jackie. The USS Nimitz Carrier Strike Group, which included the nuclear-powered carrier and the missile cruiser USS Princeton, was conducting a series of drills prior to deployment in the Persian Gulf. At about 2 p.m., two FA-18F Super Hornet fighter jets from the Nimitz received an unusual order from an operations officer aboard the Princeton. Already airborne, the pilots were told to stop their training maneuvers and proceed to new coordinates for a, quote, real-world task. More ominously, the officer asked if they were carrying live weapons. They replied that they were not. So my question is, why would they ask that? Were they hoping that they're going to shoot them, or
they were wondering if they needed to tactically engage, if they were able to?
Okay.
And they were not.
Well, they weren't. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Just check. So the possibility of shooting them down. Okay. Yeah, that's kind of scary.
Yeah. So why even send them? Why even send them after them?
So it's like America, shoot them down. Ask questions later.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh boy. The Princeton's highly advanced radar had already been picking up mysterious objects for several days. The Navy called them, quote, anomalous aerial vehicles, or AAVs, a term the military preferred to identify instead of the UFO. So AAVs.
All right.
But for several days.
Like that, but yeah.
Yeah, I know. I think of we drive those around. It's like, sorry.
Right.
But they were already picking these things up for several days. So according to Kevin Day, the Princeton senior radar operator at the time, his screen showed well over 100 AAVs over the course of the week. He stated, quote, watching them on the display was like watching snow fall from the sky. So they were seeing so many of these tic-tacs that it looked like snow for a whole week before they sent off these people to go check it out.
Right.
According to Day, the AAVs appeared at an altitude greater than 80,000 feet, far higher than commercial or military jets typically fly. Initially, the Princeton's radar team didn't believe what they were seeing, chalking up the anomalies to an equipment malfunction. But after they determined that everything was operating as it should, and they began detecting instances in which the AAVs dropped with astounding speed to lower, busier airspace, Day approached the Princeton's commander about taking action. And he said, I was chomping at the bit. I just really wanted to intercept these things. Two fighters were diverted to intercept one of the strange objects. When they first arrived on the scene, the pilots didn't see any flying objects, but they did observe what the lead pilot, Commander David Fravor, later referred to as a, quote, disturbance in the ocean. The water was churning, with white waves breaking over what looked like a large object just under the surface. Then they noticed one of the objects flying about 50 feet above the water. Fravor, the commander of the elite Black Aces Squadron, who was a Top Gun program graduate with more than 16 years of flying experience, described it as being about 40 feet long, shaped like a tic-tac candy, and with no obvious means of propulsion. He said, "It's white. It has no wings. It has no rotors." And again, like, this is 2004. Like, that, it's not physically possible for that to be flying.
And Black Aces is Carrier Air Wing 11. I worked with them.
And they're top of the line. Like, they're...
Yeah.
Oh, can you get any higher than Black Aces at that point? I don't think you can you?
No.
I don't think so.
I mean, they're a top squadron.
Yeah. Even odder were its swift and erratic movements, which Fravor described as something he had never seen before in his life. He said, "This thing would go from one way to another, similar to if you threw a ping pong ball against the wall." Another Navy pilot who served as Fravor's wingman in the air that day, and who spoke to History.com on the condition of anonymity, gave an account very similar to Fravor's. Now she's a high-ranking Navy officer, but she was a rookie pilot back in 2004. She remembered being terrified watching as the more experienced pilot tried to intercept the strange craft. And she said, "It was so unpredictable, high G, rapid velocity, rapid acceleration. So you're wondering, how can I possibly fight this?" As Fravor flew around it, he says the craft ascended and came right at his plane. He said, "All of a sudden, it kind of turns and rapidly accelerates beyond anything I've seen, crosses my nose, and it's gone." As the tic-tac accelerated into the distance, according to Day, Navy jets began launching off the carrier to try and intercept the other mysterious objects the Princeton's radar was tracking. While Fravor wasn't able to capture the encounter on video, one of the pilots who took off after he landed was able to track it down. He managed to capture video of the tic-tac using a highly sensitive infrared camera. While the Nimitz incident seems to have been known in naval circles and to some UFO AAV buffs, it didn't come to wide public attention until 2017, when the New York Times ran an article about the sighting and released the video of the tic-tac shot by the Nimitz pilot that day. So I wonder if because of that, the government then in 2018 said, yeah, they're real.
Yeah.
Do you think the New York Times? I'm just guessing here. I don't know. I didn't do that research.
Yeah, no, I would assume.
That would be my guess.
But I mean, if you haven't seen the video, listeners, we'll post it to our Games Overboard Facebook page. But it's so cool because it's obviously infrared. It's one color, then they flip the switch and they change it to a darker color. But it looks like a tic-tac on the screen because it's the infrared. It's white first before they change it to black.
Yeah,
and they're following it.
That's why I thought PJ would really enjoy that, because I was like, most people don't talk about it, but they don't know about it. It's just knowing about it.
Yeah, I tell my students all the time, UFOs are real, guys. I don't know if you know this, but they're legit real. Now, are they aliens? That part we don't know, but we do know that they are real things. This is not up for discussion here, for debate.
Yeah. Well, and when we were in college, freshly in college, so you probably had just come out of basics and were probably on the USS Nimitz at this point. We were watching 4th of July fireworks from my friend's house on the hill where she lives, and we were told that they were weather balloons. However, PJ can describe them beautifully.
It was a triangle of 3 lights, and there were 2 of them, and the lights stayed in formation the whole time as they moved across the sky. Yeah. And there are 2 different triangles, so 6 lights moving around.
And so we look up and go, "I think that's an alien? I think those are aliens." Weather balloon.
Yeah, and then they said Chinese lanterns after that.
They said it could have been Chinese lanterns, and we're like, there's no way that Chinese lanterns were lit into the sky from what's the movie Tangled, and they stayed in perfect formation. Yeah. Then it changed to it's just weather balloons. Sure, it was. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, exactly. So. Well, because the U.S. military uses balloons for surveillance, overseas. And you can do research on that all day, but they float them up and they say, well, we're getting wind direction and we're getting temperatures and barometric pressure and this and that.
The fact that there is a high quality camera on there is just an accident.
Yeah, right.
Oops.
Exactly.
Well, it's like the Chinese one that flew over a couple of years back.
Wasn't there a Russian one too? Was there a Russian one?
No, I know there was a Chinese one. Yeah. And they were like, oops.
Should we shoot it down?
Yeah, that was the Chinese one.
How did it go across the whole United States?
Everyone just wave.
It was a jet stream, guys. Don't shoot it down.
Well, it just happened,
You guys have a lot of cows.
They didn't mean anything by that,
Although, if they got any footage of Mothman, Bigfoot, a PukwuPJ, or even the Jersey Devil, we want that footage.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just saying. All right. The Times also revealed the existence of a little-known Defense Department initiative called the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, or ATIP. The shadowy enterprise, as the Times referred to it, had a budget of just $22 million, which is less than 0.004% of the department's total budget. It was said to be a pet project of then Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid, who had a longtime interest in UFOs. Although the government told the Times that ATIP had officially shut down in 2012, its former director, Luis Elizondo, insisted it was still operating. Elizondo left the program in October 2017, protesting that its work wasn't being taken seriously enough within the Defense Department. And I believe, isn't that the program that Travis from Skinwalker Ranch was a part of?
I think so.
Or no, he's on a task force, but it probably was a part of this too.
But I have to say, this all set like the accounts of the pilots sounds a lot like the Frederick Valentic disappearance. So I would like to do a mini episode on that. But he was a pilot flying from Australia to one of the outer islands, and he's radioing back to a local, what's the word?
Radio tower.
Yeah, radio tower, and he's asking if there's anything nearby because he's being trailed by this thing, and it's like circling his plane, and then it's above him, and then it's below him, and then it's coming straight at him, and then it's gone, and then it's coming at him from behind, and then he just disappeared. No one ever saw him again.
The Bass Strait.
And the entire transcript of the conversation is online, so maybe we'll do like a dramatic reading.
But that happened in 1978.
Yeah.
Just to kind of put in
context. And
context.
it's the same kind of story.
Yeah. So, just disappeared.
Yeah, his last thing
Cessna 182L light aircraft.
Yeah, the last thing he said before he disappeared was, "It's right above me. It's not an aircraft." And then no one ever heard from him again.
Yeah, ufologists absolutely love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see if I can find any.
Apparently, he was a notoriously terrible pilot, though. the people from last podcast on the left, they're like, he was probably upside down looking at his reflection in the water.
It's terrible.
Poor guy.
So, in any case, you were on after that happened and before it came to light. So, if you heard the stories, you didn't really believe it, is kind of what you're saying.
Correct.
So, what happened when the videos became public? How did you feel then?
Well, so I was out at that point. When
2000,
I got out in 2011.
Yeah, so this was six
really
years later.
Out.
Yeah.
And I was just kind of like, I don't know. But then when I started watching it, I was like, I know. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, you can't sugarcoat that. Like, it is what it is.
Yeah.
It really happened. And you have these pilots who have been flying. This commander's been flying for probably 20-something, knocking on the door, probably 30 years.
Regardless, he's a black ace, so he's up there.
Yeah. And we trust him with, this multi-million-dollar aircraft. He saw what he saw.
Yeah.
Now, Kyle raised the comment that it could have been
a test flight.
Flight. So they had these things running for a week, whatever this technology was of the government's, and they wanted to see how the fighter pilots would, do against it. Do you think that could have been like a possibility?
Maybe, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I can't say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they may have said, "Hey, we know this is something not from us. Maybe we should just scramble some black case pilots to see what they can do, if they can identify it, or they can, what the capabilities of our aircraft are." I mean, it's hard to say.
And they were already doing a drill exercise anyway. And I feel like when you do a drill exercise, you should know what you're doing. And they did ask, do you have missiles on board? So don't shoot this thing down. Or so it's just like, okay, but
maybe just see if you can keep up with it. But if you need to, do you have that capability?
And I feel like if you're...
That's probably what they're aiming at.
Yeah. If you're a Black Ace, like, you're already a top squadron. Like, you might as well, like, bring them... If it were American government created, bring them into it and then do races out there, for crying out loud, and see if you can catch up to it. I personally don't think that that's something that the government would not do that. Well, no, they probably would actually. But
yeah.
But I feel you don't want to get your technology destroyed, you know?
Right. So this is part of it too, though, is if you're not a combatant squadron, then you're not cleared to carry that. So if you're essentially in training pre-deployment, then they're not going to green light having that kind of ordnance on board, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah,
they're going to say, no, you can have trainers, you can have dummy missiles, you can have dummy rounds of 20 mag mic, like 20 millimeter ammo, but they're not going to say, yeah, you know what, we're going to give you warheads or bombs or, you know.
Oh, man, come on.
I know, right? We're not having good fireworks.
It's ridiculous.
You know, but
why do you think I joined up? This is America.
It's America, you know. But no, but they do that. They're like, well, you know, keep a small volume of that stuff on board just in case. But they're not going to be like, yo, let's send 10 million pounds of ordnance, you know, to a ship that's not deployable, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, and like hearing Travis talk about a lot, I go back to Skinwalker Ranch, but he talks about that all the time, the famous tic-tac video. And so for him to have been a part of the task force, actually he was the president, he was the leader of it. And so there was a lot of anger with the Skinwalker Ranch show because they didn't realize the government had put him in there. So he came clean, season?
After 2 years of it.
Yeah, after a couple of years, he finally came. He's like, yeah, I've been here as part of the American government. Oopsie. Anyway, so they were really angry because the government was there from the beginning. But he always talks about it being real. So he, who has all this information, you know, about UAPs, I would lean toward this actually being a realistic thing that actually happened. It wasn't American tech. It was something else because he's out there doing all this cool, like, you know, scientific exploration on Skinwalker Ranch right now. If it was fake, he wouldn't be wasting that kind of time. And he always compares things to the shape of the tic-tac.
Yeah.
Because they've caught UAPs before, and they're like, there's that shape.
Yeah, and the owner of the ranch, who was just a legit nerd and owned the ranch just so he could have this really cool sci-fi thing. He wanted to be anonymous from the beginning, and History Channel wouldn't let him. They're like, there's the only way people will take this show seriously is if they know who owns the thing, you know? Right. And he's like, okay, so if we do the show, we are not going to falsify any evidence. Like, we're not, like, none of it. It's all real. And two, I will not make money off of this. All the proceeds will go to a charity or something else. But
he doesn't need any more money. Let's be honest.
He's a real estate mogul, so he's
when he owns the Skinwalker Ranch,
for funsies.
So like that right there kind of sold me on the show. I actually like the show a lot more after learning that little bit of trivia.
I just love how Travis can't be any more like America than when he's like, well, let's shoot another rocket at it.
Yeah, that's all they do. They just shoot rockets at like this one spot in the sky where there's always an anomaly, just like hovering over.
Because it stimulates a response. You know, when you shoot missiles at it, things happen. UAPs show up.
Yeah, like at one point they shoot a laser into the sky, and you see the beam of the laser just break, like, you know, it hits something, and that should not happen. But it's always at the same spot. That, you know, there's this anomaly. Was it last season's
finale that was called Everything All at Once? Was that the finale?
Yeah.
They even had like one of those, it was a big blowtorch pretty much. They had a flamethrower and then they were burning at this thing.
I did see that video. I saw that one.
You have to just binge all the seasons of Skinwalker Ranch. It's crazy. But I appreciate the biologic episodes. So they also find like dead animals that make no sense, which you see in the books so often, but you don't see on the TV very often. And so they found these two birds that were like basically mummified. Not even that.
They're just freshly dead. Even though they've been dead for months,
weeks.
They weren't decaying.
Really? Yeah.
They were still like soft and squishy and everything. No rigor mortis had set in.
They had brought a biological expert in, like an actual professor, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, how long has this been dead? This isn't possible. He's like, look at this right here. This muscle is still moving. And as soon as I took the bodies of the birds off of the ranch to lab to do actual research, it started to decay. As soon as it was off the ranch. So, like, I like those things. Yeah. That makes me excited because it's like, look, they're doing other research too, not just shooting, rockets at things.
Yeah.
But I enjoy it. Cool. But since he always talks about it and tic-tac videos and they're seeing tic-tac shaped things in the sky, I'm like, all right, there has to be something to this.
Yeah.
That's all I got right now. Yeah. How about you?
I was going to say, I hope you guys have gotten out of me what you wanted.
Do you want to say goodbye to all our listeners, Steve?
Yeah. Goodbye and keep listening. This is definitely a good avenue to find out what's going on.
That's right. And you want to come back on whenever? It's good to go. Yeah, we love having you guys on.
Yeah, we love having our listeners on, and it was great having you on. It was a blast talking with you.
Like I like to say, when you're on, I don't have to talk to him very much. And the dad jokes dial back.
Rude.
But it's true.
Well, PJ, I got your back, so.
Well, thank you.
Oh boy. Thank you all for listening to the Well House Exorcism. Find us on Instagram as Well House Exorcism, on Twitter X as wellhouse_exorc, or on Facebook under Games Overboard because we are a subsidiary. Feel free to hop on our website as well, which is gamesoverboard.com, and please email us. We want to hear from you. And as always, think spooky thoughts. The only thing that scares me more than space aliens is the idea that there aren't any space aliens. We can't be the best that creation has to offer. I pray we're not all there is. If so, we're in big trouble. Ellen DeGeneres.